Hey everybody, it's Robot here from Vespa Motorsport and ScooterWest.com. So if you looked at the prior episode of this beautiful 2011 GTV 300 in brown, I determined we needed to go a little bit further to refurbish this scooter. So instead of doing the necessary repairs and tune-up work, I decided to pull the motor on the first episode. So now we have several episodes to go because there's going to be several things we're going to do to this motor. So the first course of action on this motor is to replace that broken exhaust stud. It's not too common that you break an exhaust stud, especially if everything's torqued correctly on the exhaust system and you're running a stock exhaust. It's a little more common if you're running an aftermarket pipe. So it's something that may interest you. And if you're wondering what the level of expertise you need to do this job, it's pretty high level. Carefully drilling a broken stud and extracting it, there's quite a bit of art to it. And typically I let my lead technician do it. He'll do it with the engine in the scooter, but he's able to partly remove the engine, drop the motor, get it at the right angle where he gets good visibility, use an expensive specialized right angle drill. He has some special tools. I wanted to pull the motor out and show everybody how to do it. Where you could see everything. And if you're doing it for the first time, I would highly recommend pulling the motor. So let's get right to it. Next, I'll show you all the tools I need and the parts that are required. So here's some of the parts you're going to need to successfully do the job. You may need two studs. The part number for the replacement stud is 435629. It's an OEM Vespa part. Highly recommend replacing the copper gasket while we're in there, and that's 480853. And why not just put two new exhaust nuts on it? Obviously one of them's missing. It's just nice to start with fresh ones that aren't rusty. Part number on these is 436947. So motor's all pulled. I pressure washed it in my pressure wash room to clean it up. It was quite dirty when I pulled it out. Should have pressure washed it before I pulled the motor, just a tip for you guys. It's always nice to have a fairly clean motor when you're working on it. The easiest way to show this job is I want to tip up the motor where we'll be able to see the stud, and I'll be able to get a straight shot with a center punch and a drill. So I have this rear tire still mounted to the axle, but I'm able to tip the whole motor up and rest out. Now, of course, I have the fluids drained out of the engine. Still is a little bit unstable, so keep that in mind. And we'll just do some preparation and start on the job. So you can see we got the stud that's still intact, still looks to be in good shape. If you did need to extract a stud that was still in good shape, you could put two 7mm nuts on the stud and tighten them against each other as tight as you can get them pretty much. Heat this up and then you'll be able to extract the stud. Before we do any sort of drilling, you don't really want to have shavings go into the valves. Preferably set the valve timing at top dead center so your valves are closed, but not 100% necessary. We'll just plug it up. I'm not going to look to see whatever the valves are set. But a little piece of foam wrapping is a good solution. This is an automatic center punch. You can also get a manual center punch, which you just take a hammer and you just tap the end of it. And you want to set yourself up for success and get the center punch in the center of the broken stud the best you can. So kind of look down there. You could make a dot if you wanted to. If you end up going crooked or you go to the side, you're just setting yourself up for failure. So let's see how this goes. Because some of these go good, some even for a professional shop kind of turn into a disaster. So I have it pretty centered. I'm keeping it very square with the flange of the head or the exhaust port. And essentially it's got a spring-loaded system in it, and each time it snaps, it strikes and it makes a ding. And I'm a little bit low, but I think I'm still pretty good right there. So you want to have very good quality sharp bits. I mean, you don't need to go as crazy as having carbide bits, which are really difficult to use, but a nice set of high-speed steel bits. You're probably going to burn the bit up doing this because these studs, they've been heat cycled so many times, they're actually quite hardened when you're drilling them. And I'll start with a really small bit. Start with like a, either a 7/64 or 1/8 inch, which comes out to be about 3 millimeters if you're doing this with a metric drill. So start with something kind of small, but not so small that's going to break off. We're going to do it with a hand drill. This is not the best hand drill. It's got a little wobble in the chuck. Having a drill that doesn't have wobble in the chuck is always going to be preferable, but go ahead and chuck the drill up. And then I want to make sure I'm just set up everything pretty square. And you may also, I'll just start the drill. And you want to make shavings and chips and not burn the drill bit. See how this is going? It looks pretty centered. If you zoom in there, you'll see I'm pretty centered. I kind of did walk the drill a little bit from my center punch just to start cutting. You can also use cutting oil. Sometimes with small holes, it's not really necessary. But we're going to go ahead and drill this pretty deep. You can see this threads in, a whole 10 millimeters or 12 millimeters, so about a 1/2 inch. It's threaded into the cylinder head. You don't want to go more than a 1/2 inch or 12 millimeters, otherwise you'll be drilling into the aluminum of the head, which could be disastrous. You could go into the water jacket of the cylinder head. You'd ruin the head at that point. So we're just going to go to town drilling. I'm keeping a nice pressure on it. There's a lot of technique to successful drilling. If you put too much pressure or tip, you could break the drill bit. That would be a disaster because we'd end up with a broken drill bit. And one little key to figure out how deep you can go, I'm just putting that against the flange. And if I flip that around, I could see that I pretty much just don't want to ever go any deeper than where my flutes are on the drill bit. You could put a piece of tape or you could put a stop on the drill bit so you're not drilling too deep. And preferably I like to drill this, as deep as I can go with it. So. Every once in a while stop, go ahead and clean out the hole. Could use compressed air, or whatever. I'm about 1/4 inch or 6 millimeters in. And I could tell the drill bit's just not cutting quite as good as it was when it was brand new. And that's pretty normal with a high-speed steel drill bit going into something hard like these studs. About 3/8 into the hole, and it's just cutting not quite as much. The original good cutting was kind of making bigger chips, and it's making smaller chips. With these small drill bits, you run them at pretty high speed on a drill. Large drills usually run at a lower speed. All right, so we're going to go up one size on the drill bit. This is an 1/8 inch, a little bit larger than 3 millimeters, what it comes out to be. And you can see going just one size up, it will drill really easily because you already have an established hole. All right, so we drilled it all the way through with an 1/8 inch drill bit. At this point, you want to take a number 2 extractor, and this is like suitable for a stud that's like 5 millimeters to 7 millimeter kind of stud. Can only take a limited amount of force, so you want to put it in a tap handle, a small one. This is very small because if you over torque this and break the tap off, you're going to be taking the cylinder head off and taking it to the machine shop to have them finish the job for you. So the stud's in there. I kind of have the motor in a different position. I had to move it. And you pretty much get in there and it bites into the stud. And if you can't break it free with just hand force, you're going to need to go up to the next size extractor. And you can't go too large. But the largest you can go, if you're having lots of difficulty and you drill the hole very centered, you go up to a 3/16 drill bit, which is around 4.5 millimeters, and pretty much repeat. I drill it, which I already did. I drilled it about 5/16 deep, about 8 millimeters deep. And at this point, you can go to the larger size extractor. This would be a number 3 extractor. And again, in a tap handle, so you're not going to overstrain it. But this size tap is going to take, or extractor is going to take a lot more force. You want to heat the head up if you're having difficulty cracking it free, just with a heat gun or torch. Obviously there's some plastic and rubber parts, so take extra care when doing so. And at that point, you just put a lot of pressure and it will bite into the stud and you'll be able to extract it. So go ahead and pull that out. And I'll show you what the remains of the stud look like after we successfully drilled it out. So here's the remains of the stud that we extracted, the broken stud. So at this point, I don't really care about the threads. I'm going to pull the extractor out and I'll show you exactly what happened here. So the 1/8 inch drill, we were able to drill all the way through the remains of this stud. We'd pop just out. You don't want to drill into the cylinder head. So you can see the 1/8 inch drill bit goes all the way through. And with the smaller extractor, we didn't quite get enough torque on to break it free. So the next step was to carefully center drill it 3/16. And we did that not all the way through, but pretty far. And then I was able to catch it with this larger extractor. And pretty much everything has to be perfect to pull this off. I mean, you can see it's drilled centered into the stud, the remains of the stud. If you drilled off to the side, got all crooked, drilled into the head, you failed at the job. So just letting you know, this is not a task for somebody's first time extracting a stud. I would practice on drilling some other bolts, because drilling through a bolt, they're hardened. They're much harder to drill through than just mild steel. So now that we have the broken stud extracted, just like replacement of the good stud, because I always recommend starting with 2 brand new studs. No, they're very inexpensive. It's not worth dealing with an old one that might be fatigued. You can just pretty much, you want to put 2 nuts on here. And these are 7mm nuts. You could just get standard 7mm nuts, or you can get the exhaust nuts. And again, might as well just start with 2 brand new exhaust nuts and thread them back to back. Go ahead and start threading it into the cylinder head. And if you're using exhaust nuts, they're going to be 10mm. So I got a combination 10mm wrench and a 10mm socket. If you get 7mm nuts, usually they're 11. But since I'd recommend replacing the nuts, you might as well just use those. So go ahead, use a small ratchet and thread this all the way in. No Loctite. No Loctite, yep. It would just burn off. So go ahead and thread that in. And once it just starts to bind up a little bit, that's as far as you need to go. You don't need to go too tight. And at this point, break free the pair of nuts. They're both in there equally, they just bottom out. Next step, we're going to put a brand new exhaust gasket in. These are actually a little tricky to install. They kind of have a friction fit, and a lot of times you'll end up bending them all up if you try just jamming them in there. So the best way to go about putting it in is find a socket or some type of round tube that's just about the right size. Alternatively, if you have nothing else, you could use your exhaust manifold and just slowly tighten the nuts to seat this all the way up in there. It's not critical, you get it all the way in, you just need to get it started. So we'll go ahead, and we already have the old one out there, it's kind of stuck in there. We'll kind of stay put, and then we'll get a socket and give it a couple taps. And again, you don't need to go all the way in, because the next step is we're going to put the exhaust manifold stub on. So just hold that in place, and we'll put the brand new flange nuts. Again, no anti-seize, that's why these are copper coated. So they don't seize up on the threads. And the best way to go about tightening this for the first time, with everything out of the way, it's very easy. We'll just go back and forth between the 2 nuts, and just usually I like to seat it And you can see it's tight, and then we'll back both of them off. And at this point, we're gonna leave it loose because when we reinstall the motor and the muffler and everything, we're gonna wanna get it all aligned. Sometimes it's even best just to have the stub out of the way because it gets in the way of the engine hanger. So this may be one of the more difficult jobs that you may ever have to encounter on a Vespa scooter, or any scooter as a matter of fact. I'll tell you, Yamaha Vinos, they use 6mm studs, and I've seen tons of those broken over the years, and we've had to repair them. If you fail at this job, don't be discouraged. At this point, you have the motor out. You can watch my full engine rebuild. I would suggest taking the cylinder head off and taking it to a local machine shop. Even if you have a broken extractor in the remains and you made a mess of it, a good machine shop will have an electric discharge machine that will burn the remains of that tap and the stud out. Alternatively, here at the shop, I have some other tools that will cut the stud all the way out, and typically, cuts the whole entire diameter of stud out, and we'll put a threaded insert such as a time cert or a helicoil. Obviously, that's kind of above the realm of this video. Typically, you want to just extract it successfully to begin with and replace it. And that's what I showed you how to do. And I hope it helped you out if you encountered this problem. So look out for the next video. Next video, we're going to service the transmission, the cooling system, and the water pump, do the valve adjustment, all the fun stuff. Get this motor completely tuned up. I already jumped the gun. I put a brand new tire on this rim. So we're gonna have this motor 100% tuned up for a 24,000 mile motor. It's got about 40,000 kilometers or 24,000 miles. Still has tons of life in it once everything's fixed on it. See you on the next one. This is Robot here from Vespa Motorsport and ScooterWest.com. If you're looking for any of the parts to do the repairs on your Vespa scooter, ScooterWest.com, we have the parts in stock to do it. Look in the description of this video. I have several of the part numbers for the job in there as well. Until next time, Robot here.